What if the American dream isn't dead, but never existed in the way we thought? Real immigrant stories reveal a truth that's far from the Hollywood version. When Maria left her home in El Salvador in the early 2000s, she carried nothing but a small backpack, $200, and a belief passed down from relatives who had made it to the United States years before. If you work hard enough, you'll make it. That phrase, echoed across generations and across continents, has defined what many understand as the American dream. But what actually happens when people arrive? Maria crossed the southern border in the back of a tightly packed truck, and after weeks in detention, was released with a court date and an address in Houston, where a cousin offered a couch and a job cleaning houses. She was undocumented, paid under the table, and working 10-hour days. After 6 years, she still lived paycheck to paycheck. No health insurance, no credit score, and no path to citizenship. Yet when asked, she'd still say, "At least here, I can work." That contrast, brutal reality versus fragile hope, is where the myth of the American dream begins to unravel. Many Americans assume that immigrants arrive to instant opportunity, but data from the Migration Policy Institute tells a more complex story. Over 50% of working-age immigrants in the U.S. hold jobs that do not match their education level. Engineers work as Uber drivers. Doctors clean offices. Degrees from countries like India, Nigeria, or Ukraine are often not recognized by U.S. licensing boards, and the process to recertify can cost tens of thousands of dollars and years of unpaid study. In that gap between education and opportunity, many immigrants slide into survival mode. Consider the story of Ilyas, who left Pakistan in the late 1990s after winning the diversity visa lottery. Back home, he had run a mid-sized construction firm. In New Jersey, he worked as a cashier at a gas station for 8 years. His English was good, his experience vast, but without a U.S. business credit history or contractor's license, no bank would loan him capital. He eventually started his own small remodeling business, but only after a decade of working nights and weekends. For many, the American dream is not a door that opens. It's a wall they learn to scale brick by brick. But here's what complicates the narrative even more. For every story of stagnation, there's another of explosive success, often powered by factors many Americans overlook. Immigrant enclaves, such as Little Saigon in Orange County or Jackson Heights in Queens, provide vital support networks, pooled childcare, cash lending circles, insider job tips. These informal systems are invisible to most mainstream observers, yet they're the hidden engines behind immigrant mobility. Take Lynn, who arrived from Vietnam in the early 2000s. Her first job was folding laundry in a hotel basement, but through a friend at church, she learned of a Vietnamese-owned nail salon hiring trainees. She started with no license, worked quietly for months, and eventually owned her own salon within 5 years, thanks to a network that fronted her rent and trained her after hours. Her story isn't in most American textbooks, but it's repeated hundreds of times in tight-knit immigrant circles, where trust replaces credit and community replaces capital. Still, stories like Lynn's are the exception, not the rule. A 2023 report by the Urban Institute showed that nearly 70% of low-wage immigrant workers live without access to employer-sponsored benefits like healthcare or paid leave. Many also avoid public programs due to fear of jeopardizing their immigration status, a lingering result of the public charge rule introduced in the late 2010s. That fear silences complaints, suppresses wages, and keeps many stuck in cycles of underpaid labor. This system, while punishing, isn't entirely accidental. The U.S. economy relies on immigrant labor, particularly in agriculture, construction, and service sectors. According to the USDA, over 75% of all farm workers are immigrants, and nearly half are undocumented. Their labor feeds the nation, yet they remain among the least protected and most exploited. They can't unionize without fear, they can't complain without risk, and yet many stay. Why? Because for all its cracks, America still offers something rare: relative stability. For those fleeing war, corruption, or total economic collapse, even a minimum wage job in the U.S. can mean the difference between survival and starvation. But the idea that anyone, through hard work alone, can rise to the top, that's more complicated and less supported by evidence than we like to admit. Studies by Harvard economist Raj Chetty show that intergenerational mobility in the U.S. is heavily tied to geography, race, and access to education. Children of immigrants born in places like Silicon Valley or Northern Virginia have far better odds of rising economically than those born in the Deep South or rural Midwest. In other words, the American dream is real, but it's not evenly distributed. And for many immigrants, it's not even theirs to claim. But perhaps the biggest myth lies in how we define success. In many immigrant households, success doesn't look like owning a house in the suburbs. It looks like sending money home every month, or having a child graduate debt-free, or avoiding deportation. These quiet victories rarely make headlines, but they are the real milestones shaping immigrant lives. As more people speak out, a different picture of the American dream is emerging. Not a ladder anyone can climb, but a maze filled with dead ends, hidden shortcuts, and invisible walls. And while some do find a way through, many others are left circling. In part 2, we'll look at what happens when the American dream actually breaks people, mentally, financially, and emotionally, and how the system often profits from their failure. We'll follow stories of burnout, exploitation, and quiet rebellion inside the very industries that immigrants built from the ground up. In the winter of 2019, Jorge collapsed on a construction site in Nevada after working a 72-hour week with no overtime pay. He was 38, undocumented, and had been in the U.S. for over 15 years. His employer avoided penalties by claiming Jorge was a contracted laborer, a loophole increasingly common in states with weak labor protections. Jorge survived, but his case was never investigated. He never got back pay. And yet, when asked if he regretted coming to America, he simply said, "What choice did I have?" That quiet resignation is not unique. It's echoed in thousands of immigrant stories where dreams run up against the structural realities of life in the U.S. Many come believing in meritocracy, that the system rewards effort, but end up discovering that hard work without legal status, credit access, language fluency, and social capital often leads nowhere. The grind becomes a trap, and the longer someone stays, the harder it becomes to leave. For women, the stakes are even higher. Domestic workers, nannies, housekeepers, caregivers are disproportionately immigrant women, and many work in private homes where abuse is easier to hide. According to the National Domestic Workers Alliance, over 60% of undocumented domestic workers report wage theft, and more than 1 in 3 say they've faced verbal or physical abuse. But reporting these incidents risks deportation, so silence becomes survival. One Filipina caregiver in Los Angeles described working 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, for an elderly couple, sleeping on the floor beside their bed, without contracts, and earning less than $300 a week. When asked why she stayed, she said, "My daughter is in college back home. I promised her I'd send tuition." That promise, born out of sacrifice, becomes the thread holding so many immigrant lives together, even as the system pulls them apart. And yet, in the middle of all this, something deeply American persists. Resistance. Quiet, persistent, often unseen. Immigrants form co-ops, support groups, WhatsApp labor collectives, where they warn each other about abusive bosses. In New York, undocumented delivery workers created their own union-like alliance, Los Deliveristas Unidos, fighting for safer working conditions, even without formal recognition. In cities like Chicago and Oakland, immigrant-run food trucks and micro-businesses reclaim public space, offering employment and dignity on their own terms. Still, those acts of agency do not erase the structural imbalance. Many immigrants remain trapped in cycles of debt and overwork. Payday lenders, knowing that undocumented borrowers can't access traditional credit, offer loans with interest rates as high as 400%. Immigration lawyers, some of them unlicensed or predatory, charge thousands for cases they know will likely fail. The very dream that brought people here becomes the product others profit from. Even the citizenship process itself is financially and emotionally draining. The average naturalization application fee is more than $700, not including legal help. Interviews are often delayed for years, especially for applicants from so-called high-risk countries. And asylum seekers, even after approval, wait years to reunite with family, assuming they survive the journey at all. And yet, in the face of all this, many still hope. Because sometimes the smallest victories carry the greatest weight. A child becoming the first in the family to attend college. A business, even a modest one, staying open through the pandemic. A green card arriving after 15 years. These quiet wins, unseen by most of America, are, to many immigrants, the real American dream. Not wealth, not fame, but safety, opportunity, dignity. But if that dream is only accessible to those who find the right network, the right geography, or the right employer, is it still a national ideal or just a lottery of luck? As the debate over immigration intensifies, the question is no longer just whether the U.S. is a land of opportunity, but opportunity for whom and at what cost? If the system demands silence, sacrifice, and suffering just to survive, can it truly call itself a dream? Or is the American dream just a story we keep telling, while millions quietly live its consequences? Have you or someone you know experienced the reality behind the American dream? Share your story below.